Welcome to the BTS Presents show.
I'm Brian Schulman, I'm the producer. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome to another episode of BTS Presents Community Cafe, where we discuss issues regarding the community of Santa Cruz, both city and county. I'm Datta, Khalsa, the host, and I have with me a panel of three distinguished guests, all of whom are active in homeless issues and each have their own focus in their lives. We have Linda Cover and Gary Ingram, who are both residents of the Tannery Arts Complex, and then Rabbi Posner, who is a retired rabbi and has helped with homeless issues the majority of his life, and also recently released a cookbook that it's not like any other cookbook I've ever seen. How would you characterize this book?
Well, I generally call it a character cookbook because the emphasis is on ethics. Chapters on moral courage, forgiveness, righteousness, justice, empathy, and compassion.
And is that
so
with regard to
it's more of a book on ethics, but it includes 35 recipes of 25 famous people.
So are we talking ethics with regard to your treatment of the food, or is this ethics
good question.
as applied to life?
The connection is that moral courage, forgiveness, righteousness, justice, empathy, and compassion sustain us as individuals, as does food. So that's the connection. We are sustained by hopefully eating good food, both spiritually and physically, and we're sustained as society, community, family by the way we live our lives in terms of our ethical character.
So that seems to take one step further, the saying, let your food be your medicine.
In a way,
yeah.
But the medicine is, I think, more the character ethics. That's why my book is very much appreciated by parents, because they can cook, bake, or eat the recipes with famous people like Mahatma Gandhi, Teddy Roosevelt, President Lincoln, my dear friend, peace unto her, Mother Teresa. And while they're eating food, the family's talking about what is the nature of forgiveness, kindness, compassion. So they're literally being sustained by both food and by family dialogue about what is ethics and what is kindness, etc.
So in addition to pass the peas, could you bring along a side of compassion with that?
Right, a plate of compassion.
Might be part of that.
Right.
Well, that's how did you get the idea to write this?
Well, my doctorate is in ethics, and at one point during my orals, Professor Norman Muskiel Shalom said, "Phil, why don't you write a book on empathy?" Because my thesis has to do with how empathy influences ethical behavior. So there's no doubt that having gotten a degree in ethics helped facilitate my eventual idea that good food and ethical behavior sustain us. And that's what drove the book. And then it was a matter of thinking about who are the famous people that I want to put in my book in terms of their personifying compassion, kindness, moral courage, forgiveness, etc.
In different measures. I mean, obviously Mother Teresa would have different characteristics than Teddy Roosevelt.
For sure.
I couldn't see her being a rough rider.
Teddy Roosevelt is in the chapter on righteousness, I think. And Mother Teresa, I said Mother Teresa, I meant Mother Antonia, but Mother Teresa's in the chapter on empathy and compassion.
And I don't think a better example exists of that. And in some ways that also ties into tonight's greater discussion, which is on homelessness, which I think anybody who drives by the Ross encampment has to feel some measure of empathy. And our other two guests happen to live in very close proximity to that at the Tannery Arts Complex. Now, you first and foremost moved to the Arts Complex because you're both artists. Do you care to share a little bit, Gary, about your art and how you got into art as a path and what that experience has been like? And then I guess we'll move over towards the Tannery and your experience there.
Well, Tannery was a goal for me for a while. I've been an artist for 50 years, all my life.
Wow.
My father he was also, although he was also a pilot for the Air Force. But I have paintings of his also that started me on my journey into art. And about 5 years ago, I heard about the Tannery. It was a community of artists, and it became a goal. So I just did everything I could, wrote them letters, wrote them notes, came down to visit, anything I could do to get in there. And it's been an amazing experience.
Can you touch on some of the benefits that residents get? I mean, in terms of economic support, in terms of community, in terms of just the the big picture of it. What makes it such a special place?
Well, one of the things is that they everybody knows artists starve for a living.
Well, good artists.
Good artists starve for a living, but they give us reasonable rent.
Is it
We have a community that has
subsidized?
a single thread. What?
Is it subsidized in addition?
I believe so, isn't it?
It's affordable
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's affordable housing.
So it's through HUD.
So it's a place that we can go and we don't have to work other jobs. Well, some of us don't have to work other jobs just to live there. We can hopefully support ourselves with what we do. I'm a jeweler. I do work in silver, gold, different color metals, and I don't really need to do that to live there, because I have my Social Security and other things that I can spend on rent.
Right.
So it leaves me and a lot of us free just to do our things, what we do.
And by definition, do you have to have some artistic pursuit to live there?
Yes.
Yeah.
We go through a board when we get there. We put out our work. We show the history we've had in art. We tell them why we should live there, and we get accepted or not.
And where does somebody go to apply?
Tannery office.
Tannery office.
It's
Tannery
actually
office.
online.
Okay.
You want to do it online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And Linda, you've been a resident there since pretty much the beginning, right?
Yeah, I was one of the original people online. I stood online for 3 days in
Wow.
the rain, part of it. I knew the value of being at the Tannery. It's a place where we're a community. There's almost 300 people there. We have, if you include the studios, we have about 60 children, so we're a family community too. And we support each other through inspiration, just talking on the way in the elevator, going to do the laundry, it's something that we're able to do as a community, and we impact the neighborhood as well. I mean, many of us work outside, or literally serve outside a community in ways that help the greater community. I have after-school programs. I work in the schools. I'm a Spectra artist. Many of us...
For those who don't know what that is.
Oh, yeah. I worked at the Arts Council as an artist that I can share the art that I know with children, and I've done this for 20 years. As that's my job. And then my other job is also being the artist person that I am. Yeah. I have a summer camp that brings in the community so that children can learn from professional artists the path of art.
And where can an interested parent track you down?
Reach it. It's Camp Tannery Arts.
Okay.
It's definitely out there, and it's a way to give back to the community by sharing what artists do, and showing children the range of art is just amazing. It's not just drawing. It's poetry. It's theater. It's dance. It's cooking. It's such a huge range. It's something will appeal to you.
And out of that comes community.
Huge. We are a really strong community. We've been through a lot together as a group. We've solved a lot of issues, and we have more issues. That's partially why I'm here.
Yeah.
We have more things that we rally behind as a group and feel that we need to work on.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's talk about the current issue of discussion, which is the homelessness. There's an encampment of over 300 people behind the Ross store across the highway from you guys, and
Are there that many?
I've heard 300 to 350. Yeah, and it's been both. I mean, there's been obviously the challenges of it. There have been some unexpected, inspiring stories as well. For example, when 2 homeless people rescued a motorist. So I mean, you've been front lines for that. So I guess if you can speak a little bit to that experience and what's being done right now with regard to that.
That whole area is a disgrace. I mean, it was mid-30s all last week, and now it's torrential rains.
And wind.
People are living in that. It's inhumane. Also, it's not safe. It's not safe for them, and it's not safe for our residents because it literally overflows into the levee, where our children don't go to school that way anymore. They go on River Street, which is even more dangerous, or possibly more dangerous. People are uncomfortable. So there's 2 dichotomies happening here. One, these people you can't live like this. This is wrong. And also, you also can't have this here overflowing into the walkway where people use that, when they could go ahead and use an existing template they've already used last year, the River Street camp.
But they ran out of funds, right? That was
you don't have to have round-the-clock police. You don't have to. All you need to do is have a humane place. It's already graded. It's already got platforms. You just do this. It worked. They had 0 complaints last year, according to Chief Mills, the police.
Andy Mills, yeah.
That 0 complaints, and I see the police in the Ross camp constantly.
What do you think the difference is?
One's supervised and one is not. One was just thrown together, just go there, go there, go there, and the other one was set up, thought about. It had showers. Women could have their own tents.
Right.
This is a huge upgrade.
So you're saying
where you need to have a partner to protect you.
So supervised, but not round the clock. So
you don't need to. Yeah, you don't. I know it. They started this and they were concerned, so they wanted to make sure everybody would be happy with that camp, because it's the first thing they ever did as a city to do that camp, and it was successful. Now all they need to do is pare down the money. And that pare down the money means you don't need round-the-clock police protection and first alarm. You don't need this. Figure this out. Just bring it down. You don't need to bring food in.
So I think it was running $90,000 a month is what I heard. So what do you think a reasonable budget would be?
Well, I'm not sure what a reasonable half of that.
Okay.
Honestly, because you don't need all of that. And because it worked.
Right now they've got none of it.
Now it's... Yeah, they have toilets. The only reason they have toilets is because those 2 guys took this guy out of a flaming car from that multiple car wreck. That's the only reason they got toilets. They were rewarded with toilets. Honestly, that's what happened, because I was there, and I know they had no toilets, and then they had toilets. And
then recently, I heard there was an effort by some of the tannery residents to feed the homeless.
We went over with Brent Adams, who's from the Warming Center.
Right. He's the director of the Warming Center.
Director of the Warming Center, thank you. And we brought one of our neighbors is a caterer, and she made huge thing of awesome healthy soup. And Brent brought in chicken soup, and other neighbors brought muffins and sandwiches and warm clothes and blankets.
And what was
we just came over. We even had our kids.
What was the experience like?
It was really good to meet people and get a face to the things that have been intimidating to some of us.
And you know, since that time too, there's when we walk by there, there's a lot more people smiling at us. It used to be like running the gauntlet going through there.
Interesting.
It was so crowded and so focused towards the path, the river walk that we have there. And now it's moved back a little bit, and you see some of the people actually smiling at us when they go by.
Now, interesting that the connection would be empathy and food, and here we have the guy who wrote the book. So
it is a way of communicating, is through the food.
Well, the nice thing about the kind of thing that you did is that you not only provided food, but as you just suggested, you interacted with people. And when that interaction takes place, we get to know each other. And we get to, therefore, better empathize with our situation. That's the importance of relationships. So that's one of the nice things that we do have in Santa Cruz is the shelter program where various churches provide both sleeping shelter and food, as with Peace United and other congregations that are doing that. When Louise, who's behind that camera, my wife and I do that, we're meeting people.
Yeah.
And that's important, not only just for us, but it's important for them,
It's
for
part
the
of
homeless
way
people.
Of solving what everybody considers something that needs to be solved. People can't live like this. And also, we as a community right next door, and I'm sure the shopping center too also has their issues with what we've presented. On the way in, this is like the entrance to Santa Cruz,
right.
And we're a tourist town. Do we really want to say this to people, that we can't figure this out in a humane way? Who would want to come here if you can't figure that out?
That they built for us,
Right.
for all of us in Santa Cruz.
So what do you?
Both sides of the river.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on an alternative solution? Do you think reopening the river camp, River
think
Street
that
camp, would be a
good
big
start.
step? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been also talk, at least lip service given to the idea of making tiny houses more
In the future.
Yeah, in the future.
Absolutely.
But even to not necessarily providing them, but also enabling people to buy them and build them.
Absolutely.
Changing the codes for the city and the county.
Absolutely.
But you know, it doesn't have to be, I think you agree, it doesn't have to be the river camp. This city has, I think, 17 different parks, 2 of them which are reserved for dogs. But they haven't been able to figure out how to effectively use a park in our city the way that they did with, quote, the river park, meaning that they can find a park and then have programming and do the security and all that kind of stuff, but they don't choose to do it.
Well,
and basically
also
that is Parks and Rec. It's not just the city council that's reneged on that. It's the unwillingness of Parks and Recreation Department to commit issues of homelessness to the availability of
there's
our parks.
other pieces of property that the city and county own
Right,
too.
exactly.
There's all kinds of little pockets. I see pocket camps that are supervised, that have basic need. Showers are crucial to the health and well-being of the entire community, not just a camp community. And showers and some place where it's safe to sleep. And it doesn't have to be massive, and you can just do a little at a time, a little one here, a little one there. And I know there's NIMBYs out there, and we have it in our neighborhood, and yet we are still going and trying to communicate with people. And what we're trying to do is, one, make it better for people who are there, and also make it better for us, because this is a huge impact on our community too, because there's other things going on there besides people just needing housing.
Such as?
It's got, there's a lot of criminal elements in there. There's a lot of drugs happening. People, there's needles. There's really a lot of things that you don't want to have.
Stolen bicycles.
Absolutely.
So it just seems like such a challenge, because you can't just say homeless people anymore. You can say white folk, or you can say, you know, city slickers.
Well, it's the mixed bag. Like our tannery community is a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We have a huge range. We're artists, yes, but we have a huge range of our take on life.
Yeah.
Every one of us. And so that's why we don't represent the tannery per se, but we are one of the voices. But everyone's concerned that how we wish to approach this is you know, it really ranges. And so the same with a camp. A camp will have a range of people in it. This particular one is just willy-nilly. It's a Wild West show.
Right.
Really. It was not planned. They were just thrown together with absolutely no thought.
And are you seeing much police protection or much police supervision happening
There's
there?
no supervision. They're there all the time. They're called.
So when you
all the
say that
time.
there's, you know, drug dealing,
I saw police
bicycle parts.
supervision one time,
Oh,
and
I
that
see
was
police
about
there all
3
the
weeks
time.
ago.
I see police there all the time.
but it seems
Well,
like
the
it's
ra-
more
the
reactive
No,
than
the
proactive.
they're
police
supervising.
department. I see the police department there all the time.
Responding to incidents, basically?
To
or-
things. I don't even know what they're there for. They're there. You know. Yeah. No, I do. I see them.
So I understand that
I've
there's...
seen them once.
I've heard
Okay.
I've heard estimates between $5 million and $10 million coming to
Yes.
deal specifically with homeless issues. I was personally disappointed. I voted for Measure H.
Me too.
Actually, the majority of people in the county did support it. It didn't reach the 60 or 65% it needed in order to pass.
Right.
But as I understand, that would have brought $21 million to deal with these kinds of issues. So what do you know about the money that is coming? I understand there's a time limit on it.
It's 2 years. Use it or lose it. And they unfortunately, the proposal period of time is, I think it's only February. I mean, they have to have a proposal in place for the city to look at it when that money comes in, and they have to go on this. And I know they're talking about navigation centers, kind of like San Francisco and many other communities have, but this does not address the camps where people sleep. It just addresses reaching out to people who are in need, of course, but it's not the same as having a camp. It's a camp, a healthy camp that's supervised is different than a center that reaches out and brings you in to navigate you through the system to help you, which is also good.
Ideally, it should be both. But Linda,
Yes.
I'd like to suggest to you that, you know, I totally agree that closing the river camp was unexcusable.
Yep.
And to this day, us homeless activists and lots of other people, we don't really understand why they did that. But I also
Well, I
think
think
you
it was
have
the
to.
money. There was the money.
Yeah,
basically.
$90,000.
But I think you also have to express a certain amount of gratitude to to Chief
Okay,
Police
so also-
Mills, because at least he was willing to say, we're no longer going to cite people. That means that
Right.
people have a place to go. Now, I totally agree. The Ross area is not the ideal place, but it's better than people sleeping all over
I
the
agree
town.
with that. You're totally right, especially during the fire season when people in
Right.
Pogonip.
And the
that
rainy
was
season.
a real. And well, no, this is not helping the rainy season. It's a puddle. It's a terrible puddle. But it was. It is better to have people with a toilet.
Yeah.
Now this is our drinking water in San Lorenzo River. It is. So we need to make sure that that's protected in a lot of different ways. But this was not set up. It was just literally people were directed in that spot so they wouldn't be all over the place. Now we have a golden opportunity, though, to open up the River Street camp, and some of those people will not want to go there. That's, but many people will. It can't accommodate at all. But you could start there, and when that money starts to come in, hopefully, we need to not just think of navigation centers, but we also need to think of how to set up camps that's here right away, now. You don't wait for 2 years. You can't wait. People will die. We have 55 people died this year who are homeless. So you can't wait. You need to just act on this.
So Rabbi, you've basically you've worked in other communities and helped with homeless programs. How have other communities?
You mentioned that before. I'm new to the issue of homelessness when I came to Santa Cruz. First of all, when I was serving synagogues in various towns, we didn't have the homeless problem the way we have in the last 10, 15 years. So it's totally different.
Okay.
So my connection to homelessness is moving to Santa Cruz and seeing the incredible situation of fellow Americans sleeping on sidewalks because they didn't have a place to go, and families, etc. So it was the empathy that I felt, that we all feel, hopefully, for suffering, and saying this has got to stop, and we have to do something.
And we can.
And hopefully, with
there's
two new city council
coming in.
people on the city council, hopefully there's going to be some change. But it's only going to happen if activists, say, look, we've got to find a reasonable place where people can reside securely, etc.
I think if we start down this path, it'll just open up. If we reopen a camp and start finding pocket places that are safe, have showers, safe for women especially, maybe even a separate portion of the camp for women. I think this is an important issue that isn't addressed. One of the reasons I did some volunteer work at the River Street camp, and one of the things that I picked up there was that they thought they could house more people, only they found that women wanted their own tent. And then I realized that, of course, you don't have to be with a person. You should have that availability. So they couldn't necessarily house all the people they thought they wanted to. But this says something in and of itself.
What was the total capacity at
I
the river
believe
camp?
they had 60-something tents, and they were hoping there would be multiple people in the tent, and they found out that many women, not all women, were preferring their own tent, and they could do it. And I think that is something we might need to address, that maybe we'll want to have an area within the camp for women possibly, or at least realize that that will be an option, that women may not want to shack up with the guy that they've been with.
And you're also talking about the issue of families. Because,
and families also
family
need to have, right. I didn't see too many families at this, at the Ross camp. I didn't really see little kids. We had our own children we brought to show, our own families how other people are living, and for our children to understand, that we are grateful for what we have. Yeah. But I didn't see any children there.
I don't think the Ross camp is a family-friendly place.
Family-friendly, oh Lord, no.
No, it's
so
not a place where families would move in.
I would just say this. The immediate response that could happen that would make a huge difference between the tension that the tannery has and the camp right now is to move that camp off the levee. So our children and our families and our people who are uncomfortable right now, for real reason, because we've had verbal abuse, and one woman was physically.
But when you say move it,
move it back, just for the time being, until you open up the River Street camp. So move it back to where Ross is, the shopping center, Ross, that building that's there, and you put a fence there.
Oh, okay.
Because it's literally overflowed in such a way that it's hard to maneuver getting through.
You talked about running the gauntlet.
It's
running
the gauntlet. There's people all over, clear down to our path where we come around and walk to town. So we have to go around that and then go up and then through another gauntlet of a bunch of folks right at the top.
The levee's for everybody. I believe there's certain things that's for everybody, but in this particular case, not everybody will use it because they feel threatened, and actually have had cause to be threatened too.
And you said there was a little improvement in the vibe when you did this outreach in Fed, and you actually, now you get some smiles and some recognition, but you see that as kind of a short-lived.
I don't see how it's going to last very long.
Yeah.
Not if they're still in the same situation they're in now.
It's terrible. They're living in the mud, and it's mid-30s. It was in California. You're not ready for this, And then now it's torrents of rain. This is hell.
But this has been going on in this town for a long time.
Well, it's time.
It's
time,
time
and the money is coming now. So that's what. And then I would say if they can't open up another camp, they're just stirring the pot and making things worse. They must open up another camp. They must have more than one, and you don't wait. You have to do it now. I mean, you can't wait for that money from the state to come in. Do this now, because these people every single day makes a difference. And and in the meanwhile, you do need to pull that camp back and make it even with the shopping area. That they're going to close. They're going to put a fence up at the shopping area, so we won't be able to access our own shopping area there because they don't want people going into their parking lot.
Well,
that means I can't get to my shopping area. So, I mean, it's just all wrong.
No, it's a tough balance. It's a delicate balance, because on one hand, Santa Cruz is a sanctuary city, and on the other hand, there's limited budget, and the reality.
When the police go in, and when you have people cleaning up for hours a day, this is adding up. When you have a police call or an ambulance call, and when you have to call any kind of services on an emergency level, you're really totaling up the bill. And if you just do something where you've thought about how to do a camp, and maybe it costs some money to do this, of course it does, but it doesn't cost anywhere near as much, I'll bet, as calling the cops all the time, having the ambulance there all the time, and just having people who are sick and have to go to the hospital because they're living like that. I mean, this is emergency money, and emergency, when you have an emergency, it costs really a lot of money. So if you add that up, compared with even $90,000, which I think is exorbitant, of course, it's ridiculous, even that, I would wonder how much that camp actually really costs. That has nothing. That has nothing. If you add up police time, ambulances, services that are in there,
the bark they put down for the mud.
They did, well, so they could get the garbage out without being in the mud. It's like, it wasn't for people, it was for the services. And now they've contracted out the garbage. So even Parks and Rec isn't doing that. Now, once you contract, now you're talking even more money, right? So I would question that investment, whether this is not saving money.
So I guess coming back to the thesis of your book, applying empathy, applying courage, applying these things, how might you suggest that we as a community could actively become a part of a solution?
Well, it's being a conscientious electorate. It means that we're not just asking our political elected leaders, city council in this case, in the main, and the county board of supervisors, to take action. It means that we demand that they do something. And I have to say, the previous city council, I mean, we activists used to go to the council. One time I broke down crying in front of the council. I was talking about an 82-year-old homeless woman who came the meeting before and described what it's like to be homeless at 82 as a woman. And, here I'm practically in tears, and they're looking at me as if I'm some lunatic asking them to do something unheard of. The lack of political will on the part of some of our ex-city council people, and maybe a few current ones now, is mind-boggling. I just cannot understand the lack of empathy that some of them show for the homeless people in this town.
So how about other organizations such as advocacy groups, churches? I know that there's
churches.
Historically, churches often.
I'm involved in a group called Conscience and Action with Huff, Robert Norris, and we're going to sponsor this Thursday a rally, and the police chief is going to speak about the whole issue of people having to sleep in their campers, which is another whole issue. So there are activist organizations in town that are trying to push the issue.
And churches? What are churches
and churches
doing?
And some churches.
Some churches.
Right.
Can you name the churches?
Well, Peace United, I think, is probably in Trinity and Hadesha Menu, Bethel, two of the synagogues.
How many people? How many people are they? I mean, they allow basically nightly camps, and then
they alternate different people into the social hall to sleep.
And are any of these funds going to be able to be granted to these organizations? Do you know how the funds could be allocated?
I think it's up in the air right now.
I don't think that money could, I'm not sure. But I don't think the churches are asking, I don't know. The sponsoring organization is the Santa Cruz Coalition on Interfaith Coalition on Homelessness that sponsors the shelter process. And so they would be the beneficiaries of any monies that would come.
So it seems we really, if we only have through end of February to figure this out, we need to figure out, to make the proposal, who the organizations would be that are eligible, who they should, I mean, obviously they should contact the city. And is it only coming to the city, not the county?
This is for the city. The county has their own funding that'll come in. My understanding that we get, I've heard, $8 to $10 million just for the city that's earmarked.
And that's for 2 years.
This is in 2 years, and it's coming fast, and the proposals have to be in right away. And there's not everybody's ready for proposing. You can't just go buy a building. Then all the money's gone. I mean, you have to actually be. You have to be careful with your money, I do know that they had it in the good times, and it looks like there's a serious interest in navigation sites, which other cities do, and they are effective.
And that's getting people to treatment or getting people
Yes,
to
and they're effective that way. And ultimately, the stages of the ladder is for housing first. Okay, but to get there, you don't get a house. You have these steps, and one of the steps is like taking care of people who are sleeping in the mud right now. I mean, that you can provide a step up the ladder. Maybe it has a shower in the next level. Ultimately, maybe at some point we will want to have tiny houses. I don't know where people want to go, but you immediately don't jump in necessarily to a navigation center, although I do think that's where they're thinking of doing this. But I think I want them to be reminded through this show and through our activities that you need to address the immediate thing, which is people sleeping in the mud, outside, needing to have some basic facilities.
Balance with the safety of the neighbors, your right to quiet enjoyment of the public walkway, a feeling of safety going from where you guys live.
Yeah, because we see a lot of, again, we see things going on that shouldn't be going on over there, things that we don't want our children to see.
Exposed to, yeah.
There was not, when was it? It was about a month ago, I guess. One of the guys was slumped over one of his carts. He overdosed on heroin. He wasn't dead. I mean, he just was slumped over his cart in our parking lot. Yeah. Which is only about 100 feet from where the camp is.
And that's a tough one to explain.
We definitely get overflow in really a lot of ways. You know, we have people coming around screaming in the middle of the night. You know,
Banging on windows.
You know, I mean, we have overflow and from people who do need help. Another purpose of having a decent camp that's supervised is that you can get some help.
Well, when you have you already approached some of our present city council people about this?
I will be going to Tuesday's meeting at 5:30 and being part of the community. When you get 2 minutes to speak as part of the community, and
well,
then
you know, if you call the mayor's office first, you can get 5 minutes. So that's better than
I did not know that.
Yes, you can be. You
But
can
I
be
want it
put
on the agenda. Yeah,
right.
right.
So then you have to call, and if you call, you can get put on the agenda, and you don't just have to.
it's probably too late for this agenda.
Well,
No, it's not.
And
You
I
can
think,
call Monday,
and I think this
probably.
agenda is more about the Measure M redux, you know, having to do with rent control. Yeah, I really see homelessness as and safety of residents as a separate issue. I don't think, I mean, there's not enough time in a night to talk about both issues. I think they should be talked about separately.
Well, this is what I'd like to see. I would like to see them to put it on the agenda so that people can actually talk to it more than 2 minutes or 5 minutes, right? And actually they can talk with each other about this. And then I'd like to see a town hall meeting at the Civic Center.
And have you talked to Andy Mills in terms of the safety issues of the
Yeah,
encampment?
we went and met with him.
And what was his response as far as dealing with the drug issues, the bicycle thefts, those kinds of things?
He acknowledges that it's definitely happening and that he's called. He's one of the groups that are sending people there. It's because you need to have, if you're not given a place to sleep, you can sleep on any public property. And it's better to have people in a place. Not that place though. That place is not prepared for this. Right. So we have people, that's the new way. And so he does not give out tickets for camping because there's no such thing anymore. Right. However, but he responds and he's saying that people need to be active and that we need to pressure as a community citizens to go forward with this and all that. That's why I'm here.
And hopefully you can lobby to be on, I assume there's going to be a task force. And
I'd hope there would be.
It seems like you'd be either one of you would be good candidates for that since you're
year,
right on the front lines.
One thing you just said though was you can't, you have to look at them as separate issues, this public safety and
homelessness?
The homelessness also, because
it isn't separate, actually.
they're separate.
I was saying rent control
our
and homelessness
situation-
are different. Those are different issues.
Yeah,
it's the homeless problem that has caused this public safety issue for us, because they were put there.
Right.
Last year, Conscience and Action and Huff proposed 3 times before council that they appoint a task force on homelessness that would involve activists, homeless people, Parks and Rec, etc. They refused.
No response.
Well,
and how about the current council? Are they open to that?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, I think Drew Glover is. Because we've been meeting with him. We've been meeting with whomever we could.
I think there's a majority, hopefully of 4 now that will.
Well, they seem focused on rent control, and when you look at communities like San Francisco, obviously that really doesn't work because they have just as bad a homeless issue as we do. So really, I think the council needs to be educated to say, look, we need homelessness addressed, period, and safety addressed, period, full stop. Everyone can argue till they're blue in the face about rent control, subsidized housing, any of those other possibilities, but we need triage right now.
Right. We need,
and I think a task force to figure out, can 90,000 be spent more wisely than it was?
And we also need to just move forward without even a task force. We need to, we already have a camp almost ready. They tore it down, but they graded it. They put in facilities. It's almost ready. You need a little, dinking around and it'll be ready. And it can be done like that. That's what I think. And that, don't worry about the money at the moment. I think you can actually cut it way back and start there. Get your task force. Do this. But in the meanwhile, you actually have to do something. And I think you can do something. And it wasn't just the city who paid for that. I understand there were some religious community groups that helped pay for that camp too.
Right. The coalition. I
Yeah,
think.
and help pay for. So it's not the city did, and they overdid that. But I think
And
even
Salvation Army, by the way, has been
there you
helpful in
go,
this.
and they already provide for people. So it wasn't just the city who's complaining about the bill. Other people were helping with that, and I know Chief Mills feels that that was overkill, but they were trying it out, and I think that he would be in support of doing something like that without necessarily the round-the-clock police, literally right there in a trailer.
And we could probably move them over there next week.
And you would both feel much safer if that were done.
It was successful.
It
was a successful camp. Zero complaints, according to Chief Mills.
So I guess taking this conversation full circle back to the guy who wrote the book on applying compassion. Well, I think compassion is a key ingredient in this, and I think that's one thing that came to light in this connection between the food and the actually connecting and getting some smiles. I think building on that, and the book touches on that, and that's a historic. If you go back to, I was raised in the Sikh tradition, and free kitchen, where everybody could sit side by side, whether you were a noble, whether you were a servant. You look at the Thanksgiving tradition. It's a very visceral, nourishing concept, and I think how would you, having been a rabbi for most of your life, how would you minister to people that they could apply a sense of compassion while also being safe, being sensible, and helping solve the issue? How would you recommend somebody apply that here?
To our political leaders or to homeless people?
Both. Where would you think it would be most productive?
Well, I think it's be
In 2
most
minutes or less. I'm
productive
kidding.
in terms of
You get at least 5 here.
getting our elected officials to show empathy, moral courage, and kindness to the homeless people that live in our town.
If we could just get a few of them to move into a homeless camp for a week, the homeless problem would be over.
Like trading places.
Yes.
They would
Part
just
two.
go walk through
I
it.
think-
They would understand better.
I think they know.
I don't think they really know. I know that it's people who complain that when you drive into Santa Cruz and you see these flapping tents, as a tourist, you might just want to turn around. It's business.
They've gone by. They've seen that too.
Of course they have. They should walk.
Don Lane, when he was the mayor, did a 10-minute wonderful video presentation. I think it was about homelessness, and his fellow city council people saw, etc. It's the lack of moral courage on their part to decide, yes, we feel empathy for these people and we are going to do something.
So empathy backed with courage.
Empathy and moral courage and kindness, which are definitely chapters in my book. But chapters on pages of a book are not chapters in the hearts of human beings whom we elect. We need to help them paginate themselves in terms of values, etc. And I personally think that some of them, definitely on the city council now, have empathy for the situation. I think there's a fairly good chance, if the community demands action, that they will act.
I think that timing is right now.
Yes, the timing is
Timing is right now. There's some funds coming in. And we have some young people on the city council, younger people,
Well, we have
and I think that counts.
For
You
sure.
know, and who are closer to this issue than we've had people be this close.
Well, and if you could bring one historic figure back to life out of your book, who would you call for this one?
On this issue?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Would it be Roosevelt? Would it be?
Yeah,
Mother
it
Teresa?
might be Roosevelt and Gandhi. Oh, and Martin Luther King is in my book. So I think M.L. King, Gandhi, Teddy Roosevelt was definitely a progressive
But somebody with guts.
person. Yeah.
Somebody with guts.
And T.R. had guts.
Well, I commend the three of you for having the guts enough to speak openly about this, and I think that's one of the things we pride ourselves on our program or at least we strive for. These issues are going to continue, and if any one person can come up with a really good idea, it just takes one, and then obviously the empathy and the courage to come forth with it. So thank each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll keep discussing until we come up with a solution.
Thanks for watching the BTS Presents show. Thanks for watching the BTS Presents show.